What's up, Barnhill family, and welcome back to your home for all things combat sports.
Yo.
So it looks like Ian Garry is going to get his, what I deem to be his first real test in the UFC. He's going to be squared up at the end of the year against Vicente Luque. Vicente is young. He's in his prime. He's dangerous. He's got great hands, and he can submit you. So he's a threat anywhere the fight goes. And unlike a lot of Gary's previous opponents who are kind of more past their prime or guys that were just outside the top 15, this is another guy that if Gary's going to show us, hey, I am quote unquote the future, you got to beat the other guys that are in their prime during your generation. So this feels like the right next step, and it's a very tough fight.
Yeah, and if you look at the rankings, it's like number 10 versus number 11. So it's a very even fight as far as statistics go, and I think this is a great next step up for Ian Garry. Obviously, Ian Garry has ice running through his veins. He can deal with these big moments, no problem. He'll throw his hand around Joe Rogan and cut a promo great on the microphone next. He's one of the few fighters in the UFC that for some reason when they ask the fighter, who do you want to fight next, he actually gives you a name. He actually gives you something to look forward to as a fan. And so I'll always be thankful for fighters that do that. You know, he tried to get the Wonder Boy fight, and I guess that didn't end up happening. But Luque is almost sort of like a Wonder Boy fight if you sort of look at the X's and O's of how this fight can go. Now, I know Luque is very dangerous when it comes to the ground game, but a lot of people look at Luque as a high-level striker and just a guy who's really good at mixing in the martial arts everywhere you can possibly go. The same thing can be said for Ian Garry. He just hasn't been tested in the octagon inside the UFC near as many times as Luque. So I think this is a great next step for Ian Garry. I think it's going to be a tough matchup. I'm excited to see where the odds are on this. I don't really know. Ian Garry will probably come in as a slight favorite, but that could go either way. Vicente Luque has been in there with the best fighters that the UFC has to offer at 170, and he's gotten his hand raised against a lot of them. So if Ian Garry can get his hand raised against Luque, I think we're on to something really special here. 14-0 would look quite good against Ian Garry's name.
Yeah, you know, Ian Garry has that but again, you have to look at the level of competition. Right. Vicente Luque, yeah, I think he's like 1-2 in his last 3 or something like that. But if you look at who he's fought, it's like Tyron Woodley, Bilal Muhammad. Yeah. You know, it's like the best of the best at 170 have fought Vicente Luque, and he's been competitive in all of those fights, and he's gotten his hand raised against some very, very skilled fighters and former champions. Now, Luque, as far as the X's and O's of the fight goes, I think that Ian Garry, for him to win this fight, needs to keep the fight standing. He's a little bit taller. He's a little bit longer. As you said, he's got that ice water running through his veins. He seems to be at that level of supreme confidence that we saw Conor at when he was coming up. He doesn't believe that he can be finished, but he believes he can finish everybody. Right. So I think on the feet, he's going to come out with that confidence. He knows what to do. He's very crisp. He uses good kicks. His combinations are good. He's rangy for the division, and I think he can have some success there. Now, where I think Luque does have the advantage is in the grappling. Yeah. Luque's a dog. He's been 5 rounds before a few times, and if he can get Ian Garry up against the cage and start to zap that energy and then snap him down to the ground, I think that he can start to have some success and accumulate some rounds. And this is only a 3-round fight, so he only has to win 2. And one thing we know about Vicente Luque, he's very hard to finish. So if it gets to a situation where Luque can come out and snag the first 2 rounds, Ian Garry could be fighting from behind. So while I think it's a winnable fight for Garry, I think it's certainly more winnable in the stand-up realm than it is against the cage and on the ground.
Yeah, judging by Luque's skill set, you would think that him going in there against Ian Garry, it would be wise for him to go and take it to the ground. But that's always easier said than done. Luque's a great striker, and he'll be able to mix in his shots with his striking. And I think that's the best way he can go in there. Make this a dogfight. Make it a little bit ugly. If you go out there and try to kickbox with Ian Garry and do basically MMA range striking, you're likely not going to get your hand raised. Vicente Luque is very durable, but so is Ian Garry. And one thing that stuck out to me about Ian Garry, and I know his last fight was against Neil Magny, but he looked really good in the takedown defense realm, and he just wants to keep this fight standing. He wants to stand in there and bang. He wants to give Dana White and the rest of the fans of the UFC exactly what they want to see, which is exciting striking exchanges, great precision power, great shots that, you know, people aren't expecting to see, and then ultimately a great finish if he's able to get it done. If he's not able to get the finish, at least he put on 15 minutes of really impressive striking, and that's something that the fans always appreciate. And I just think that Vicente Luque is going to have his hands full if he tries to sell out for the takedown and just go in there and try to grab Ian Garry. Ian Garry's long. He's got long legs. And while that seems like it might be great for a wrestler to get in and get low on, Ian's very good with his knees. He's very good with his kicks. And I just think that that could be quite dangerous for Luque to start switching up his game all of a sudden and selling out for takedowns. I think he's got to mix it up. He's got to get dirty with his boxing, try to get inside, make Ian Garry forget about where they are in the cage for a moment, get it up against the cage, and then look for his, trips and body locks and things like that. I don't think he's going to go in there and look for singles and doubles. I think he's going to go in there, try to make this a dogfight, make it ugly, make Ian Garry bleed a little bit, and just see how far Ian Garry's willing to go when it comes to getting tested by an experienced veteran like Luque.
And I think this fight will very much tell whether or not Ian Garry is ready to be in that conversation of a true title contender.
Yeah, he put
at
himself.
170.
Yeah, he put himself in the mix with Shavkat and Hamzat. And I know Hamzat's up at 185 now. It seems like he'll be there for a while. But he's like, there's a lot of undefeated freaks here at 170, and him and Shavkat and Hamzat. These guys are definitely the future of the 170 division. This seems like his jump into what is currently the top 10 of the 170 division. I'm excited for it. Ian Garry is must-see TV at this point, and Vicente Luque is definitely the same thing.
No doubt.